Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. The situation in Eastern Europe has just taken a dramatic and unexpected turn, and today we are diving into what many analysts are calling a moment of desperation and geopolitical humiliation for Vladimir Putin. Reports are emerging that the Kremlin is scrambling for external support as Russian forces sustain devastating losses in Ukraine. And in a surprising move, Putin himself has reportedly reached out to Belarus for emergency assistance. This is being framed by international observers as Putin effectively crawling to Minsk for help, a moment that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. But how did Russia reach this point, and why does this development matter not only for the battlefield, but for the global balance of power? Over the last few months, Ukraine's counteroffensive has accelerated with unprecedented intensity. Kyiv's forces, backed by Western intelligence, drone warfare, precision long-range strikes, and growing global support, have managed to dismantle critical logistics hubs, ammunition depots, command centers, and most importantly, Russia's war infrastructure inside occupied territory and even within Russian borders. Ukraine has not only reclaimed strategic ground, they have dismantled Russia's image of military superiority. Ukrainian special operations and partisan groups have conducted sabotage missions inside Russian territory with surgical precision. Energy infrastructure has been hit. Black Sea naval capabilities have been severely degraded. Russian air bases have caught fire repeatedly. The once feared and untouchable aura of Russian military invincibility now looks shattered. And this is where Belarus enters the picture. Alexander Lukashenko, the authoritarian leader of Belarus and one of Putin's closest allies, has so far played a delicate balancing act. While he allowed Russia to use Belarusian territory as a launch pad for the invasion in 2022, he has repeatedly resisted committing Belarusian troops directly into the war, knowing full well that his own regime could collapse overnight if Belarusian soldiers began returning home in body bags. The people of Belarus, already angry after years of political repression and economic decay, have no appetite to die for a war that is not theirs. But as Russia's losses grow more catastrophic, Putin is now putting immense pressure on Lukashenko to step in militarily. And this is why reports say Putin practically crawled to Belarus, not as a commander, but almost as a beggar. What makes this development even more dramatic is the growing internal instability inside Russia itself. Multiple regions are increasingly voicing dissatisfaction. Wives and mothers of soldiers have taken to social media demanding answers. Moscow elites, the wealthy oligarchs and political insiders who once thrived under Putin, are quietly furious at the collapsing economy and tightening sanctions. The Russian ruble, once heavily propped up, is struggling. Businesses are fleeing. Hundreds of thousands of young professionals have escaped the country to avoid mobilization. In other words, this is not just a military crisis for Putin. It is a political and economic crisis threatening the long-term survival of the regime. Ukraine's battlefield success has been strategic, not just brute force. They didn't try to match Russia with manpower. They used mobility, technology, precision targeting, and intelligence superiority. Western ISR satellites, real-time data from allied countries, encrypted Starlink communications, AI-powered target acquisition systems. Ukraine has transformed into a hyper-digital battlefield machine. Every step Russia takes is watched. Every blind spot is exploited. And now, with its armies exhausted and its equipment destroyed, the Kremlin is desperately looking for fresh manpower and weaponry, and Belarus is the only option left that is geographically and politically accessible. But here's where it gets even more dangerous. If Belarus is forced into this war, the entire dynamic of the conflict could change overnight. NATO has already issued direct warnings to Lukashenko. Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia, all NATO members, have deployed forces to the Belarusian border. If Belarus enters the war, NATO may move from passive deterrence to aggressive containment. That does not mean direct NATO involvement in Ukraine, but it does mean NATO could begin cutting all border access, striking rogue logistics, or even arming Belarusian resistance cells against Lukashenko. And let's be absolutely clear, Belarusian society is already boiling. Thousands of Belarusians fled the country after the fraudulent 2020 election, and many have joined anti-Lukashenko resistance groups, now training alongside Ukrainian forces. If Lukashenko sends troops to die for Putin, his own domestic enemies may finally see their chance to overthrow him. So now imagine Putin arriving in Minsk, not as the dominant superpower patron, but as a leader whose empire is visibly cracking. The image is humiliating. Analysts say Lukashenko is privately mocking the Kremlin's desperation, but at the same time, he is terrified. He knows that if Russia collapses, he collapses too. Belarus as a nation has become so economically and politically dependent on Moscow that survival is tied to one man's fate. This is why Lukashenko plays a dangerous double game, promising loyalty to Putin while also secretly preparing escape plans and negotiation backchannels with the West if everything falls apart. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues to strike deeper into Russian logistics networks. Drone attacks are hitting Moscow's elite residential districts, symbolically shaking the heart of Russian power. The Black Sea Fleet has been forced to relocate from Crimea. This is unprecedented. Never in modern history has Russia been forced to evacuate naval forces from territory it claimed. Every day now, Russian state media struggles to contain panic. Propaganda anchors who once bragged about taking Kiev in 3 days now talk about survival, negotiations, and nuclear threats, a sign of ideological collapse. And this brings us to the most critical question: what happens if Belarus refuses? If Lukashenko, fearing internal rebellion, says no to Putin's demand for direct military support? Experts say that could be the beginning of the end. Putin has no other ally left willing to escalate. China is cautious not to invite Western sanctions. Iran provides drones, not soldiers. North Korea sends ammo, not battalions. Belarus is the only remaining lever. If that lever snaps, or worse, if Belarus itself erupts in rebellion, then Putin's war machine may face total isolation. But here's the twist: there are rumors circulating that Lukashenko is not just resisting, but actively preparing a betrayal. Some insiders say Belarusian security services have already opened secret dialogue channels with Western intelligence to negotiate Lukashenko's future if he helps push Putin into an unwinnable position. This is not confirmed, but the geopolitical shadows are moving fast. Belarus may be Putin's last lifeline, but it may also be the knife behind his back. Ukraine understands this perfectly. They are not just fighting a military war. They are fighting a psychological, economic, and political war. Every strike is designed not just to destroy equipment, but to fracture alliances, discourage soldiers, and expose Putin's vulnerability to his own inner circle. And now, with Putin begging Belarus for help, that strategy has worked beyond expectation. The world sees the desperation. The illusion of Russian invincibility is gone. And for the first time since the war began, Putin's survival is openly being questioned not just in Washington or Brussels, but in Moscow itself. What happens next could reshape Europe for generations. If Belarus joins the war, we may witness a chain reaction across NATO's eastern flank. If Belarus refuses, Russia may face collapse from within. If Lukashenko betrays Putin, the balance of power in Eastern Europe could flip overnight. And Ukraine, the nation many underestimated, may emerge not just victorious, but as the new central pillar of European security. This story is evolving fast, and the world is watching hour by hour. Thank you for watching. Stay alert and stay informed because everything is about to change.